History forgot their names, but their enemies never did. When European armies marched into Africa expecting easy conquest, they met warrior kings who shattered empires and rewrote the rules of warfare. These are the stories they never taught you. Stories of black kings who made invaders tremble and turned certain defeat into legendary victory. Before we begin this journey through forgotten history, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. These stories have been buried for too long, and your support helps us bring them to light. Now, let's step back in time to meet three kings who refused to kneel. The year is 1482, and Portuguese ships arrive at the mouth of the Congo River. They come bearing gifts, crosses, and promises of friendship. The Kingdom of Congo is magnificent, a sophisticated empire with complex political systems, skilled craftsmen, and thriving trade networks. King Nzinga welcomes these strange visitors with open arms, curious about the world beyond his shores. The Portuguese speak of partnership, of mutual benefit, of bringing civilization through Christianity. But behind their smiles, they harbor different plans entirely. Nzinga converts to Christianity and takes the name João. His son, who will become King Afonso I, embraces the new religion with genuine faith. Afonso studies Portuguese language and culture, believing in the promise of equal partnership between kingdoms. He writes letters to the Portuguese king, addressing him as a brother, a fellow Christian monarch. For a brief moment, it seems as though two worlds might meet in peace. But the Portuguese want something the Congo has in abundance: people. The slave trade begins slowly, then accelerates into a nightmare. Portuguese traders don't just buy captives from border wars anymore. They create wars, arm rival factions, and orchestrate chaos to feed their hunger for human cargo. Afonso watches his kingdom bleed. He sees his people chained and dragged to ships. He sees families torn apart, villages emptied, his empire hollowed from within. Afonso picks up his pen and writes letter after letter to Portugal's King João III. His words burn with righteous anger and desperate pleading. He begs his fellow Christian monarch to honor their shared faith, to stop the merchants who corrupt his nobles and steal his people. He writes that thieves and men of bad conscience seize his subjects to sell them, that even nobles and members of his own family are not safe. He documents every injustice, every betrayal, every broken promise. Portugal ignores him. The ships keep coming. The chains keep rattling. Afonso realizes the terrible truth. His conversion, his education, his faith, none of it matters to men who see only profit. He becomes more defiant, attempting to control the trade, trying to ban Portuguese merchants, playing Spanish and Portuguese interests against each other. But he is one king against an emerging empire, a voice crying in the wilderness of European greed. Afonso dies still fighting, still writing, still believing his words might change hearts hardened by gold. His kingdom eventually crumbles under the weight of the slave trade, but his letters survive. They become the first African testimony of resistance, the first written record of European treachery on African soil. In failure, he achieves something remarkable. He ensures the truth cannot be completely erased. 3 centuries pass, and the world has changed. By the 1880s, European powers sit around conference tables in Berlin, drawing lines on maps, dividing Africa like a cake at a dinner party. They call it the scramble for Africa, as if the continent is a prize to be grabbed. Nation after nation falls to European guns and treaties. But in the ancient highlands of Ethiopia, Emperor Menelik II prepares to write a different story. Ethiopia stands alone, an island of independence in a sea of colonization. For 3,000 years, it has resisted invaders, surviving empires that crumbled to dust. Now, Italy, hungry for colonial prestige, sets its sights on this ancient kingdom. The Italians believe Ethiopia will be easy prey, another jewel for their crown. They have modern weapons, European training, and the arrogance of conquerors who have never met real resistance. In 1889, Italian diplomats present Menelik with the Treaty of Wuchal. They smile and assure him it's a simple friendship agreement. Menelik signs, believing he's secured peace. But the Italians have crafted a trap. The treaty exists in two versions, Amharic and Italian. The Amharic version speaks of consultation and cooperation. The Italian version declares Ethiopia an Italian protectorate, a puppet state. Italy announces to Europe that Ethiopia now belongs to them. When Menelik discovers the deception, his rage is volcanic. He publicly denounces the treaty, tears it apart, and sends a message that echoes across Europe. Ethiopia has no need of anyone. She stretches her hands to God alone. The Italians laugh at his defiance. They prepare for war, confident that their modern army will crush this African emperor within weeks. Menelik prepares for the fight of his life. He sends messengers across his empire, calling every warrior, every nobleman, every chief to arms. His wife, Empress Tetu Betul, proves herself a military strategist equal to any general. Together, they modernize their forces, purchasing weapons from European dealers playing both sides, even establishing armories to manufacture ammunition. When warriors answer the call, they come from every corner of Ethiopia, 100,000 strong, an army of patriots ready to defend their freedom. Italy advances with 20,000 soldiers in early 1896, expecting swift victory. Their generals study European battle tactics and ignore warnings about Ethiopian capability. They march toward the town of Adwa with absolute confidence, certain that their superior civilization guarantees triumph. March 1st, 1896. Dawn breaks over the mountains of Adwa, and the world holds its breath. The Italian army moves into position, but Menelik has chosen his ground carefully. His forces surround the Italians, holding the high ground, knowing every valley and pass. When the battle begins, it unfolds like a nightmare for the invaders. Ethiopian warriors, armed with modern rifles and centuries of military tradition, pour down from the hills. Italian soldiers trained to fight European-style battles find themselves overwhelmed by tactics they cannot predict. The Ethiopian army moves with coordination and purpose, executing complex maneuvers that shatter Italian formations. Empress Tetu herself leads forces in battle, inspiring troops with her presence on the front lines. By day's end, the Italian army lies in ruins. 7,000 soldiers dead, 1,500 wounded, 3,000 captured. It is not just a defeat. It is annihilation. News of Adwa spreads like wildfire across Europe, shattering assumptions about racial superiority and African capability. An African army, led by an African emperor, has defeated a modern European power in open battle. Italy is forced to recognize Ethiopian sovereignty. Menelik II achieves what no other African leader manages during the scramble. He keeps his nation free. Ethiopia becomes a symbol of hope, proof that resistance can succeed. Menelik's victory inspires Pan-African movements for generations, showing that dignity and independence can be defended against any odds. Even in death, his legacy burns bright. Ethiopia never kneels. While Menelik fights in the east, another king wages a different war in the west. Samurai Ture is born into slavery around 1830 in what is now Guinea. His early life is hardship and struggle, but he possesses something extraordinary: a brilliant military mind, an unbreakable will. He rises from captivity to become a warrior, then a leader, eventually forging the Wassoulou Empire across territories that will become Guinea, Mali, and Ivory Coast. By the 1880s, French colonial forces pushed deeper into West Africa, expecting the usual pattern: intimidation, treaties, occupation. When they reach Samorai's empire in 1882, they anticipate another easy conquest. Instead, they meet their greatest nightmare: Samurai doesn't fight the way Europeans expect. He studies their tactics, adapts their weapons, and develops strategies that turn their advantages into weaknesses. He captures French rifles and doesn't just use them. He establishes factories to manufacture his own firearms and ammunition. His soldiers become experts in guerrilla warfare, striking fast and disappearing into terrain. They know intimately French commanders report fighting an enemy who seems to anticipate their every move. The war drags on. 1 year becomes 2, then 5, then 10 samurai employs scorched earth. Tactics when necessary, moving entire populations to deny resources to French forces. He retreats strategically, rebuilding his army, striking when opportunity arises. He plays French and British colonial interests against each other, securing weapons from one while fighting the other. His diplomacy matches his military skill. French officers begin calling him the Napoleon of Africa, grudging respect from men who cannot defeat him. Samurai fights on multiple fronts simultaneously, commanding armies across vast distances, maintaining discipline and loyalty among his troops through the longest conflict of African resistance. His reputation grows with every battle, a warrior king who simply will not surrender. 44 times Samurai's forces meet French armies in major engagements. 44 battles across 16 years of continuous warfare. The French send reinforcements, updated weapons, their best commanders. Samurai adapts to each new challenge, surviving assassination attempts and betrayals, losing territory but never losing his resolve. His own son is captured and held hostage. The French demand surrender. Samurai fights on. By 1898, the situation becomes impossible. French forces close in from multiple directions, supplied by the full resources of an empire. Samurai's kingdom shrinks, his options narrow. Finally, through betrayal by local guides who lead French forces to his position, he is surrounded and captured. Even in chains, he remains defiant, refusing to acknowledge defeat. The French exile Samurai to Gabon, where he dies in 1900, far from the lands he defended for nearly 2 decades. But his legacy outlives his captivity. French officers write in their reports that he was the most formidable opponent they ever faced in Africa. Future African liberation leaders study his tactics and draw inspiration from his resistance. Samori Touré proves that sustained defiance is possible, that one man's courage can hold back an empire, even if only for a time. 3 kings, 3 different centuries, 3 unique approaches to the same terrible challenge, foreign powers demanding submission. Afonso fought with words and faith, documenting crimes for history to judge Menelik. Fought with strategy and unity, achieving the impossible victory. Samurai fought with endurance and adaptation, refusing surrender even in defeat. Each proved something the invaders wanted forgotten, that African kingdoms were sophisticated, strategic, and formidable. These were not primitive tribes waiting for civilization. These were empires with their own glory, their own genius, their own right to exist. History books erase these stories for a reason. They contradict the comfortable narrative of inevitable European dominance, of grateful natives welcoming superior civilization. These kings expose the truth. Colonialism was not a gift, but a theft. Not civilization, but conquest. Not progress, but destruction. Their resistance was inconvenient, so it was forgotten, buried under centuries of propaganda and selective memory. But these kings defended more than territory. They defended dignity, identity, and the future. They proved that courage exists in every culture, that brilliance knows no race, that the human spirit refuses chains regardless of who forges them, and their stories echo through generations, whispered among those who remember, celebrated by those who seek truth. History tried to forget them, but memory is stronger than silence. Their legacy survives in every fight for justice, every stand against oppression, every refusal to accept subjugation. These forgotten kings remind us that resistance is always possible, that dignity is always worth defending, that freedom is always worth the cost. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel so we can continue uncovering the hero's history. Try to erase comment below and tell us which king inspired you most. Afonso's written defiance, Menelik's stunning victory, or Samurai's endless resistance. Share this video with everyone who needs to know these stories. These forgotten kings defended their lands. Now it's our turn to defend their memory. The truth deserves to be told.